What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to yet another Northeast Outdoors video. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to catch spring bass, where to find them, how to target them, what lures to throw. In the spring, there's a lot of change. The bass can end up in a lot of different places, so it's good to know where you should be looking and what you should be throwing. Now, when I'm rigging up at my car before I even go out to the pond, I have 3 rods that I have picked out. On one of them, I have a slow sinking soft plastic, such as a Senko, creature bait, something that's going to fall and give action while it falls down. These are very good for fishing on calm days, very good for flipping cover, especially if you rig it like a Texas rig. You can put that through like lily pads, vegetation. You can really get in there to where the bass are going to be sitting already. On the next rod, I'll have my moving baits such as jerk baits, crank baits, spinner baits, lipless cranks, all those like normal moving baits you usually throw. These work very well for when the water's already moving around on windy days. Or maybe if you have bait that you can see that's in a certain area and they're moving around a lot, you can throw some type of moving bait through that. It'll get the attention of any type of fish that's nearby. My favorite moving bait to throw this time of year, it's definitely got to be a spinner bait. I do my best on spinner baits. Even on calm days, I'll throw spinner baits and I'll get some good fish. They just do a very good job moving around a lot of water. They get their attention. Jerk baits are a very close second. Something about when you pause it after a couple twitches really gets those bass wanting to hit it. Really, between those 4 or 5 moving baits, it's up to your preference, whatever you have the most confidence in. And whatever it looks like would work the best at whatever body of water you're fishing. Overall though, you should really just keep lure selection pretty simple. The bass are coming out of their winter habits. They haven't been eating too much. So once they get up into those shallow areas, they're gonna wanna eat pretty much everything that moves. So they shouldn't be too picky, and you should really just throw what you feel best throwing. Now, once I get to the body of water, maybe I park my car there, I'll go on my phone, pull up my depth map, and check for certain structure points, drop-offs, any type of contour or flat that I could find. You can really find a lot and narrow down a lot of areas just by looking at online depth maps. You're not going to want to be fishing like any type of water past 30 feet really during this time of year. All the fish are going to want to move out of that water and more towards the shallows that are warming up faster than the bottom of the lake is. So when I get there, I'll go on my depth map. First thing I want to look for is any type of shallow flat that is right next to where the deepest water is. That's because they already have the easiest access to this flat, and that's probably the most likely place they'll be. That'll be the shallowest water within the shortest distance. And another very good spot to not overlook are offshore humps. So say if you have your shoreline drops down to 20 feet, and you have this hump in the middle, comes up to 10, and then past that, it drops down to 30 feet. That's your offshore hump right there. What they'll do is sit around almost the base of it, and they'll wait for any type of bait fish to come up over the top of it, and they'll just fly right up the sides of this. They can also use it to corral their bait fish. It just provides a very good structure point for them down there. Usually the bottom of the lake is pretty monotonous. It's like vegetation, mud, sand. So if you have any type of elevation change, they'll usually hug pretty tight to wherever that is. Now once I have some good looking areas marked out on my phone, I'll actually get into the pond. Once I'm in there, I'll look around, see if I can find any type of blowdowns, trees, coves, stuff like that that you necessarily wouldn't really see on a map. I mean, a cove you can see on the map, but all the other stuff, vegetation, trees, it's really going to take you getting out there and actually finding them. So basically what I'll do is I'll get out on this pond and I'll start heading towards the nearest cove. But if there's any types of trees, vegetation, good looking stuff that I can stop on the way there, I'll take some time, cast around those areas. Never overlook those because they very frequently hold fish. You never want to just blow right past them. The main places you really want to key in on are these shallower coves. It basically acts as like a funnel for these bass. They'll swim right up through their deep water into these coves. They'll stack up along the shorelines, especially if it's a pretty narrow cove and there's trees all around it, so it's hidden by the wind. They'll really love to sit in this place. Now, I would say a majority of my fish around this time of year in May come out of these coves. The best lures for the coves, I'd say definitely be the slow sinking soft plastics. Senkos really shine here in any type of shallow water. Senkos you can really work well, cover a lot of water depth. And there's something about the way a Senko falls, the tail wiggles around. Bass can just like sit on the bottom, look up and see that, and I don't know why, but they love it. Same thing goes for creature baits as well. Like if you're throwing a craw, lizards, anything like that, while they fall, they'll like flutter down. Something about that action, bass just really love. Now, another great lure for the inside of coves are jerk baits. They aren't going to spit around too much water like a chatterbait, spinnerbait, something like that, but they will provide a very quick, flashy motion. It's It's going to give you a good reaction strike on these bass. And again, they're going to be looking for anything they can really inhale. So if you're throwing something that looks like an injured fish, which would be an easy meal, they're going to go right after that. Now, if you have a cove that maybe drops all the way down to like 20, 30 feet, I'll stay around the edges. I focus most of my time during this time of year in 1 to 10 feet of water. That's usually where I find most of them. That's where the sun's going to penetrate all the way down, warm up the bottom and the water surrounding it. And at this time of year, they're really just looking to warm up and get some food. Now, another area you really want to key in on are wind-blown points. These are great because the wind will blow right into this point. It'll stir up the bait fish along the area towards the point. And on the back end, where it's more sheltered from the wind, the bass will sit back there as well, just waiting for bait fish to come around this point, escape the wind, and then they'll get them. Now in these areas, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, swim baits, stuff that's going to move around a lot of water is going to do very good. It's going to make it seem like a bait fish trying to flee away, or maybe a school of bait fish. And that's exactly what the bass are already looking for. So throw something that they're already eating and you're going to do very well. Now crankbaits also work very well for these points. And that's because usually there's a pretty good drop off or water change within that. And I think crankbaits work the best when maybe over a 30-yard span, you go from a foot of water to like 20 feet of water. Because at the top of your cast, it's going to hug that shoreline and it's going to follow it straight down. It kind of stays in the same area throughout the water column. And that's going to work very well for these bass that are probably sitting on the bottom, waiting to fly up at something. You're going to be right down in their face, and that's what you want. Shallow flats are another very good spot to key in on. These are going to be the points that probably grow the first vegetation. You're going to see very good grass flats, lily pads, that type of stuff all around these flats. And they're going to warm up pretty quick as well. And not only are the bass looking for warm water, but the bait fish are going to gravitate straight towards the warmest point. So we have a really nice shallow flat where the bait fish are like piled up. The bass are going to be sitting very close by waiting to pick them off. Now if it's windy, chatterbaits, crankbaits, spinnerbaits, those all work very well for shallow flats. If it's not windy, I'm pretty much always throwing some type of jig or soft plastic along these flats. Now you want to fish the whole flat, but two very good places to key in on are the spot where the flat drops down into deeper water and the spot where the flat comes up into shallower water. That's going to provide some good access to different water depths for the bass. You can find them sitting right in the middle of the flat, like it's pretty common. They're going to prefer to have different water depth very close by. Keying in on these two areas is going to lead to a much more productive fishing session. Now, any trees or laydowns are going to be very, very good this time of year. They're going to be very good bass magnets. They're just going to sit right inside of those branches, wait for anything to move around the outside of them. They're going to just chomp down on them. Again, they just came out of wintering. They're looking to eat as much as they can before spawn. So they're going to be sitting in these ambush points, trying to just eat as much as they can throughout the day. Now, you're really going to want to throw jigs around these trees. You can really get up and personal with these branches, trees, everything. Because if you have a good jig set up, you can really just throw it straight into the middle of it and rip it right out. Even if you have a fish, you're probably just going to reel that thing right out of the tree. So don't be afraid to throw that jig in some crazy looking places. Other than jigs, if it's windy, throw your baits that move around a lot of water, such as crankbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, swim baits. If it's not windy, throw some slow sinking soft plastics around the outside of this tree. It's always a very good way to get fish. Now spring warms up, the vegetation is really going to start to grow in. You'll see some good grass mats on the bottom of the lake. You'll see some lily pads growing up in the shallower ends. These are going to be very good places to find your fish. Any type of new structure that pops up in a lake, like maybe another tree falls down to the water, or again, your grass and lily pads start growing in the spring, they're going to really want to investigate that, and they're going to use it completely to their advantage. So again, lily pads and vegetation, when they're new, are going to attract a ton of fish. They also produce a lot of oxygen, which a very oxygen-rich water is what fish want. So when you're in the shallower end with a lot of grass and lily pads, that'll be a lot more oxygenated than a place that maybe only has a couple laydowns and then deeper water right next to it. So this is going to attract a lot of bait fish, which then in turn will attract a lot of bass. Now my favorite way to fish these types of places are going to be the soft plastics, Senkos, creature baits. Letting those fall straight into the grass is the best way to catch fish in these areas. If it's windy, you're not going to be able to feel it all the way. And if you prefer to throw something like a spinnerbait, crankbait, chatterbait, that type of thing, it's going to also work very well. But if you have conditions that allow you to throw these soft plastics, I would always recommend fishing those first. Now, the biggest thing to take away from this is to find where the water is warmest and find where the bait fish are. Usually those two will be hand in hand. If you find warm water, you'll find bait fish. And obviously, wherever you find bait fish, there'll be bass. Do some online scouting before you get to the lake. Have a game plan before you get there. But also, once you put in your boat and you get a good look at the lay of the land, see where all the trees, vegetation, where the wind's blowing, look at all that stuff, take it into account, and form a plan in your head on what you want to do. And if you do catch a fish, take note of what you were doing, where that fish came from. Try to figure out why you caught that fish. And this will lead you to a lot more fish in the future. I used to just catch a fish and be like, cool, I got one, throw it back. Wouldn't really take any consideration, but once you start to really think on why you got that fish, it'll lead you into a ton more fish, and it'll like put another piece in the puzzle for you on how to catch fish at what different time. Now, thank you guys for watching today's video. If you're looking for a more in-depth explanation on fishing any of these lures, I have a bunch of those types of videos coming out. I also have a couple that are on my channel already. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, keep up to date with all that stuff. Thank you guys again. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.